Okay. Good morning, all. So we'll see one more problem on Banker's algorithm. So in the previous algorithm, along with the snapshot of the system, the available resources is also given, right? But here you can see this, right? In the snapshot, they have given only the number of processes exist in the system, current allocation, and the maximum need, and the available resources is not given. So from the No, in the last class, I think 47 was there. 47 members were joined, but today only 41. Okay, no problem. I'll continue my class. Okay. So when compared to the previous problem, in the previous problem, available resources are given. But here, if you consider in this snapshot, the current allocation maximum need is given. From the current allocation here to calculate the available resources. So we'll start with the problem statement. The system contains three resources. The number of instances of each resource R1 is equal to 7, R2 is equal to 7, and R3 is equal to 10. Means we have three resources R1, R2, R3, and each is having a instance. R1 is equal to 7, R2 is equal to 7, and R3 is equal to 10. Then the current resource allocation state is shown below. Here in the snapshot, three processes are there, P1, P2, P3, and three types of resources R1, R2, R3, and the current allocation for process is given, and also the maximum need for each process is given. So this is the maximum need and this is the current allocation. Maximum need means maximum requirement of the resources for each process for completing their execution, right? So maximum need is given, current allocation is given for each process. This is the maximum need and current allocation for process 1, this is for process 2, and this is for process 3. The question is the current allocation is in a safe state? So you have to check whether the current allocation is in the safe state or not. And next one is, the next question is, can the request made by process P1 be granted or not? So before finding the current allocation or before finding the need matrix and the safe state, first we need to calculate the number of available resources, but that is not given, right? But in the previous problems, available resources is also given, but in this problem available resources is not given. Here to calculate, so from here to calculate the available resources from the total available resources minus current allocation, you will get the available resources. You can see this here. So solution, first we have to find the available resources. Here first we have to find the available resources. Then how to find the available resources? Available resources are uh, uh, determined by using the formula number of instances minus sum of allocation. Number of instances minus sum of allocation gives the available. This is number of instances minus sum of allocation gives the available. So from the above snapshot, here from the above diagram, you can take the current allocation for each process. So for each process the current allocation is given, right? For P1 it is 223, and for P2 it is 203, and for P3 it is 124. So next you have to add the R1 resource which is allotted to all three processes. Similarly R2 you have to add, and R3 means you have to add column wise, so that you will get the total number of resources of R1, R2, and R3 for which are allocated to P1, P2, and P3. Now total R1 instances are 2 plus 2 plus 1, it is equal to 5. Similarly for R2 it is 2, 0 to 4, and for R3 it is 3, 3, 4. Now we got the available the allocation of the resources as 5, 4, 10, means 5 instances of R1, 4 instances of R2, and 10 instances of R3 is totally allocated. Then find the available resources. So available resources is equal to 7, 7, 10 minus 5, 4, 10. What are these 7, 7, 10? These are the total instances of R1, R2, and R3. So in the problem given that R1 is equal to 7, R2 is equal to 7 and R3 is equal to 10, that we are considering 7, 7, 10 minus 5, 4, 10 means these are the resource instances that are already allocated to the processes P1, P2 and P3. Hence available is equal to 7, 7, 10 minus 5, 4, 10, it is equal to 2, 3, 0. Now available we have calculated. After calculating the available, next you have to calculate the need matrix. How you calculate the need matrix? By considering the maximum need minus current allocation, right? For P1 it is maximum minus allocation. How much it becomes? 3 minus 2, 6 minus 2, 8 minus 3, it is equal to 145. Similarly for P2 it is 433 minus 203, it is equal to 230. And for P3 it is 344 minus 124, you will get 220. So after calculation of the need matrix, next you have to find the safe sequence. The procedure is same as I already explained in the previous class. So you are comparing the need of each process P1, P2, P3 and you are comparing with the available. If the need is less than the available, then the resources will be allocated. Then the process completes the execution and releases the resources. If the need of the process is greater than the available, then we will move on to the next process. Understood? So here like that you can calculate the safe sequence. So for the given problem, the safe sequence becomes P3, P2 and P1. Understood? After calculation of the available resources, next you have to find the need matrix. That means calculation of need for P1, P2, P3. After that, compare the need of P1 with the available, next P2 with available, P3 with available. In this way you compare. First we are going to allocate it for P3, next P2 and P1. After that it is at last it is P1, right? So the safe sequence you are going to get is P3, P2 and P1. Understood? You are going to get the safe sequences P3, P2, P1. I will not display that slide because you already solved two problems on that. So in the same way you calculate the safe sequence. Understood? Okay. And the second question is, can the request made by the process P1 110 be granted? So next you have to check. In the previous problem I explained that how to calculate the new need of a matrix, new allocation and also the new available resources if P1 of 110 is granted. So then P1 of 110 is granted means what is the P1 current allocation? It is 223. Then we are adding 110 to that, then that becomes 330. Then what will be the need? The need becomes 035 for P1 and the available resources becomes 230 minus 110. Then the available resource becomes 110. So available resources becomes 110. uh, and the need of all the processes P1, P2 and P3 will be greater than the available resources, and hence the resources cannot be allocated to the requested process. If the resources are not allocated to the requested process, then the process will move on to the wait state and they will never get the resources and the system will result in a deadlock situation. If we allocate the a resource made by the process P1 of 110. So hence the for the process P1 the request 110 cannot be granted immediately, because if we grant it, it will lead to the or the system will lead into the unsafe state or the deadlock state, and hence the resources cannot be granted immediately to the requested process P1. So this is about the calculation of the resources, and after that finding the safe sequence and all. So in the previous two classes I already explained how to calculate the safe sequence and all. That's why I am not going to do it once again. But here the new thing in this problem is calculation of the available resources from the maximum given resources and the current allocation. Okay, by using the maximum available resources and the current allocation, then we can calculate the currently available resources, and the remaining steps are same as the previous problem. Understood? Any doubt in this? Any doubt? Okay. If no doubt, then I'll move on to the next topic, that is deadlock detection. Uh, Wait, I'll share the slide. Okay, the next topic is deadlock detection. So, in the previous classes, you studied the deadlock avoidance and the deadlock prevention algorithms. If no deadlock prevention or deadlock avoidance algorithms are employed, then the system may result in a deadlock situation. Understood? If a system does not employ either a deadlock prevention or the deadlock avoidance algorithm, then the system may lead to or a deadlock situation may occur in the system. Then if the deadlock occurs, then what the system has to do? So the system must provide an algorithm that examines the state of the system to determine whether a deadlock has been occurred or not, and next the system will provide an algorithm to recover from the deadlock. Understood? Here we assumes that the system is neither employing the deadlock prevention or deadlock avoidance algorithm. If no those two algorithms are not employed, then we say that the system may results in a deadlock. Then if the deadlock occurs in the system, then the system must provide an algorithm to examine the state of the system to determine whether the deadlock has been occurred or not. Then the second option is the system must provide an algorithm to recover from the deadlock. Means here the system must provide the deadlock detection algorithm to detect the deadlock, and hence other one is the system must provide the deadlock recovery algorithm also to recover from the deadlock. So these two algorithms we are going to study in this class. Okay, so first we'll see the deadlock detection, and here for deadlock detection once again we are considering two types of methods. One is the single instance of each resource type, and other one is several instances of a resource type. So these two things you already studied in the deadlock avoidance, right? So there we are considering the resource allocation graph. In that we are considering whether the resource allocation graph consisting of the cycle or not. If cycle is there, then we say that the deadlock is occurred, otherwise it is not. And also that is means we are using the resource allocation graph if we have only the single instance of each resource type, and if we have the multiple instances of resource types, then we use the Banker's algorithm to detect the deadlocks, right? So in the same way here for the deadlock detection and recovery, we are using the single instances of each resource type, and the other one is several instances of a resource type, that is similar to the Banker's algorithm. So first one is somewhat similar to the resource allocation graph, and second one is similar to the Banker's algorithm. So first we'll see the single instances of single instance of each resource type. So here if all the resources have only a single instance, then we can define the deadlock detection algorithm that uses the variant of the resource allocation graph, and that is called as the wait for graph. So wait for graph is a variant of the resource allocation graph. So why we are using the resource allocation graph? Here we assume that the each resource consisting of a single instance. Okay, so if three resources are there, R1, R2, R3, then each resource consisting of only one instance. R1 will have one instance, R2 will have one instance, and R3 will have one instance. If that is the situation, then we are using a single instances of a resource allocation graph. Here we are using the variant of a single instance of each resource type, and that graph is called as wait for graph. That graph is called as the wait for graph. So here this is called as the wait for graph. Then what is the difference between the resource allocation graph and the wait for graph? We'll see it in the next slide. See here, so first one is the resource allocation graph, and the second one is the wait for graph. Then what is the difference between resource allocation graph and the wait for graph? You can just see here, you can compare the resource allocation graph and the corresponding wait for graph. So if we remove the number of resources from the resource allocation graph and collapsing the appropriate edges of the number of resources in the resource allocation graph, then that lead to the wait for graph. Understood? So if we remove the resources in the resource allocation graph and the corresponding edges, then it results in a wait for graph. So then how we can join the edges in the wait for graph? So here wait for graph consisting of only the resource, only the processes. How many processes are there? 5 processes are there in the resource allocation graph. Then we'll keep all those 5 in the wait for graph, and we are only eliminating the resources which are existing in the resource allocation graph. After eliminating the resources in the wait for graph, then how we are representing the edges in the wait for graph? If there is an edge from P1 to R1, here you can see this. So if there is a edge from P1 to R1 and R12 to P2, then we say that there is an edge from P1 implies P2 or P12 to P2 in the wait for graph. Understood? If there is a edge from P1 to R1 and R1 to P2, then there exists a edge from P1 to P2 in the wait for graph. But in general we can say that if there are two edges from P1 Pi to Rj and sorry Pi to R1 and R12 to Pj, then we say that there is an edge from P1 to Pi to Pj. Understood? Here let us consider P1 and P2 are as Pi and Pj. Understood? Here we are considering P1 and P2 as Pi and Pj. There exists a edge from Pi to Pj in the wait for graph only when there are two edges from Pi to R1 and R1 to Pj. Then there exists an edge from Pi to Pj in the wait for graph. If there are no edges in the through the resources in the resource allocation graph, then that will not be included in the wait for graph. Understood? So similarly you can check it here. So the edge from P1 to R1, R12 to P2 is there. So there is an edge from P12 to P2. Similarly from P2 to R4 is there, R4 to P3 is there. Hence there is an edge from P2 to P3. Similarly from P3 to R5, R5 to P4 is there. Then there exists an edge from P3 to R4. Then P4 to P1 through R2 is there. So that edge we are representing. And here from P2 to R3 and R3 to P5 edge is there. So that is represented from P2 to P5. So here there is an edge from P1 to P2 or P1 implies P2. What it indicates? P1 is waiting for the resources that are currently held by the process P2, or we can say that the P1 is waiting for the resources of P2 that are P1 is waiting for the resources that are currently held by the resource P2. Understood? So here if in the wait for graph we can say that if there is an edge from P12 to P2. So what it indicates? So P1 is waiting for the process P2 to release the resource that are currently needed by the process P1, or P1 is waiting for the resources of P2 that are currently held, so that those resources are needed by the process P1. Understood? So this is the representation of a wait for graph from the resource allocation graph. So after that, so the remaining things are same. Then how to detect the deadlock and all? So if there exists a cycle in the wait for graph, then we say that there is a chance of the deadlock. Okay, so here you can in the wait for graph you can see that there is a cycle from P12 to P2, P3, P4 and P1. So cycle exists between P1, P2, P3, P4 and P1, and one more cycle between P1, P2, P4 and P1. So then we say that the P1, P2, P3 and P4 will involve in the deadlock, or the deadlock will occur for P1, P2, P3 and P4. So in this way we are using the wait for graph to detect the deadlocks. So here, to detect the deadlocks, the system needs to maintain the wait for graph. Okay, the system needs to maintain the wait for graph, and the system has to invoke the detection algorithm. That is, it has to invoke the deadlock detection algorithm periodically to check whether the deadlock is occurred in the system or not. So to detect the deadlock in the wait for graph, the system needs n square operations. Okay, the system needs n square operations, where n is the number of vertices or number of processes in the graph. So here in the graph, how many processes are there? 5 processes are there. Then how many operations the algorithm requires? The algorithm requires 5 square, that is equal to 25. So algorithm needs 25 operations to detect whether the deadlock has occurred in the system or not. So this is about the single instance of a resource type. Here we are using the wait for graph to detect the deadlock. So here the difference between the resource allocation graph and the corresponding wait for graph is given. So resource allocation graph consisting of the processes as well as the resources, whereas the wait for graph consisting of only the number of processes in the system. So this is about the wait for graph to detect the deadlock. Next we'll move on to the several instances of a resource type. So here in this example, that is in the wait for graph, we assume that all the resources are having only one single instances. But if the resources are having the multiple instances, then we cannot make use of the resource allocation graph or the wait for graph. Next we'll move on to other algorithm called as the deadlock detection algorithm. It is somewhat similar to the Banker's algorithm. Okay, so if multiple instances of resource types are available, then the resource allocation graph or wait for graph is not efficient to calculate or to detect the deadlock. Hence we'll go for the other detection algorithm, and it is similar to the Banker's algorithm. So in the Banker's algorithm, we have defined the several data structures, right? Similarly here also we are defining three data structures. One is called as the available, second one is the allocation, and third one is the request. Available, allocation, and the request. So these three these three data structures are also defined, are used in the Banker's algorithm, right? So in the same way here also we are using three data structures: available, allocation, and request. All of you know what are available, what are allocation, and what are request, right? Available means the available total available resources, and it is represented by a vector m, and it indicates the number of available resources of each type. Next one is the allocation. Allocation is the matrix that is defined by the length n by m, and it defines the number of resources of each type currently allocated to each process, and the row of this matrix is considered as the vector, and that vector indicates the number of resources allocated to each process. So for suppose for p1, p2, p3, the corresponding row for p1 indicates number of resources allocated to p1. Similarly, in the matrix, the second row indicates the number of resources allocated to the process p2, and third row indicates that the number of resources allocated to the process p3. Understood? Allocation, it is a matrix, but each row in the matrix we are treating it as a vector. And the third one is the request matrix. It is once again the n by m matrix, and it indicates the current request by each process. So if request of ij is equal to k, then it indicates that the process pi is requesting k more instances of each resource type rj. Understood? So it indicates that the process pi is requesting k more instances of resource type rj. So request is also matrix, and allocation is matrix, where the available is the vector of length m. So these three we already discussed in the Banker's algorithm, right? So here also in the deadlock detection algorithm we are using these three data structures. Next we'll see the deadlock detection algorithm to detect the deadlock. So the algorithm is somewhat similar to the banker's algorithm. So there also we have defined two vectors, work and finish, and work is assigned with available. So where available is the available resources, and initially finish of I is set to false. So finish of I set to false means initially no process has completed its execution and hence it is set to false, right? And next one is the, we'll see the algorithm. Before that I'll take the snapshot of the system for the attendance purpose. Okay. Ah. So the algorithm is same, sir, right? Work is equal to available and initially finish of I is set to false, and we are finding the I such that finish of I is equal to false and request of I is less than or equal to work. So these two steps are similar to the banker's algorithm. We'll find the process Pi such that that process has not yet completed its execution and the need of that process is less than the currently available. Okay, if these two conditions satisfies, next we'll move on to the next step, that is if these two conditions satisfies, then the resources will be allocated to the request process, then process completes its execution and finish of I is set to true. But if these two conditions are not satisfied, or if one of the condition is not satisfied, that is if the request is greater than the available resources, then the resources cannot be allocated to the requested process, and if that is the case, then the finish of I is never set to true, then finish of I is equal to false, right? So for some I is less than or equal to 1, less than or equal to n, then the system is in the deadlock state. So then we'll say that the system is in the deadlock state, means if the available resources is less than the need of the existing processes. Now let us consider that three processes are there, P1, P2, P3, and the need of P1 and also P2 and also P3 need is greater than the available resources, then the resources cannot be allocated to any process, then all the processes will enter into the waiting state and they will never complete its execution. Then we'll say that the system is in the deadlock condition, or the deadlock has occurred in the system, right? So this algorithm requires an order of m into n square operations to detect whether the deadlock is occurred in the system or not, or to detect the system is in a deadlock state. Understood? So the algorithm is same, only the there is a change in the fourth step, right? Here in the previous algorithm we'll setting finish of I is equal to true and we'll finding the safe sequence there, but here if no such I exists, then finish of I is remains the same, that is equal to false, and we'll say that the process Pi is deadlock, means if for the requested process if we are not allocating the resources, why? Because the need of that process is greater than the available, then the resources cannot be allocated, then the process will move on to the wait state and it will never execute. Then we'll say that that particular process is deadlocked, and then we say that the system is in the deadlock condition. So by using this algorithm we can detect the deadlock, and number of operations requires is m into n square operations. Okay, m into n square operations is required to detect the deadlock, where m indicates the number of available resources. If 3 resources are there, then 5 processes are there, then how many operations is requires? 5 square, 25 into 3, 75 operations will are required to detect the deadlock in the system. So this is about the deadlock detection algorithm. We'll see one problem for deadlock detection algorithm. See here, we have 5 processes P0 to P4 and 3 resources A, B, C, where A is having 7 instances, B is having 2 instances and C is having 6 instances, and the you can finally check the available resources. See here, the available resources are 0, 0, 0. If any so for the current snapshot, there is no deadlock because all the processes will complete their execution, because the need of P naught is 0 0 0. Similarly, the need of P2 is 0 0 0. So initially P naught will complete, after that P2 will complete, and next P3, P1, P4 will complete their execution, and the system will be in the safe state or no deadlock will occur. But suppose if any of the processes request for the new resource, because initially see the need of P naught, it is 0. Similarly for P2 is 0 0 0. If P naught needs any one resource type, then the P naught will not be immediately granted. Why? The available is 0 0 0. Then this makes the P naught to move into the wait state. Then P naught will never release the resources. Then if P naught will not release the resources, okay, P3 will complete it, but once it releases the resources, other processes cannot complete the execution. Then we say that the process or the system will move into the deadlock situation. Or if you consider P naught is requested for 0 0 1, means it requested for one instance of resource type and that is not available, then P naught will move on to the waiting state. And if the P naught will never get the resources, then the P naught will never execute. Then we'll say that the P naught is in the deadlock condition, or deadlock is occurred for the process P naught. Then we say that there is no safe sequence and it results in the deadlock situation. So this is about the deadlock detection algorithm. So here solving the problem, finding the safe sequence is similar to the Banker's algorithm. That's why I'm not going to solve it once again. So but we are finding that whether the available resources are greater than the need, then they are allocated, otherwise they are not allocated. Or if the requested is greater than the available, then that request cannot be satisfied, then the process will move or enter into the deadlock situation, and that is detected by using the deadlock detection algorithm. So this is about the deadlock detection, and in the next class we'll see the recovery from the deadlock. So this example, as I already said, okay, if any one of the process requests, then that cannot be serviced or that cannot be granted, and hence the system will enter into the deadlock situation that I explained here. P naught if request, then it cannot be allocated or cannot be granted, then the deadlock exists, or the system enter into the deadlock situation. Okay, next we'll move on to the next slide, that is we'll see the deadlock algorithm usage and the recovery from the deadlock in the next class. So if I'll complete the recovery from the deadlock and the process termination, that completes this chapter. So I need one more class to complete this chapter. So for any doubt in deadlock detection, or in the Banker's algorithm, or in the deadlock detection algorithm? Deadlock detection algorithm is similar to the Banker's algorithm. Okay, any doubt? If no doubt, I'll stop my session. Okay, any doubt? If no doubt, I will close my session. I think one as he recently joined, 42 only. Okay, so I'll stop my session here itself. Any doubt? If no doubt, then I'll stop my class here itself. In the next class, I'm going to cover the recovery from the deadlock. So if I complete the recovery from the deadlock, then the chapter will be completed. And if, I think for you people, test timetable is announced. The test will start from 11th of May, right? And my subject test is on 14th of May. I will talk to other section sir, and will finalize the syllabus, because we wanted to keep the same syllabus for both the sections. So I'll inform it after once I contact the Sanjeev Kunte sir, and I'll inform you later. Okay. Any doubts? No. Then I'll stop here. Okay. Bye. Okay, the test will start from 11th of May. 11th of May. 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and each day you will have one subject test from regular timings of your class. The class will start from 10, right? Or the from 9 to 10:30, I think. So they will start, you have to write the test from 9 to 10:30. After that regular classes will be there, and the test will start from 11th May. They will share it today or by tomorrow, because the test will start from 11th, right? And mine is fourth subject, right? And mine will be on fourth day. If it is starting from 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 14th will be OS test. So according to your syllabus code, subject code, according to the code they are conducting the test, and one day one test. After that regular classes will be there. Okay.